Welcome everyone to the June evening meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor Bramer leads us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Here.
Mr. Loeb?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Molino? Mr. Stroud? Mr. Wild?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our May 17 board meeting. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes. Mr. Simpson on the motion, Mr. Thomas on second. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes of May 17, 2019 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're going to move right into the senior. Okay, we're going to move right into the presentation of Warren County Senior of the Year Awards. Dee here? Hi, Dee.
My TV's not here. I'm sorry.
They're not here.
I thought they were coming, but I guess not.
Would you like to proceed?
Sure.
Okay.
So each year, the Office for the Aging is asked by the New York State Office for the Aging to designate 2 individuals from each county that have gone above and beyond in providing for their community, volunteerism, and just helping out others. So this year, we honor John Plantier. He is from the town of Lake Luzerne, and Pat Ciance, who is from the town of Bolton. And I'm just going to read through their bios real quick. So John, for the better part of 2 decades, served on the board of the Hadley Luzerne Library, much of that time as the library's president. He's also a board member of the Southern Adirondack Library System. As president of the Hadley Luzerne Library, John has exhibited a unique management style. He performs the traditional functions of presiding over board meetings, working with the staff, volunteering at library fundraisers, setting annual budgets, and directing library planning. In addition, he can always be counted on to do routine maintenance, undertaking small as well as large construction projects, and occasionally repairing leak plumbing. He does it all with a fun sense of humor that enlivens the experience of his coworkers. John is always on the go and always looking for ways to help others. He gives rides to those without transportation, to their doctor's appointments, and delivers meals for the Warren County Office for the Aging. As he is always excited to promote the library, he also drops off books to people who are homebound. John is also a member of the Lions Club and the Hadley Luzerne Historical Society. John was born in Troy, New York, and he married his wife Nan in 1971, and together they have 1 daughter. They moved to Lake Luzerne 16 years ago, once Nan had retired. John has a love for the Adirondacks and for the outdoors, and spent a fair amount of time hiking and canoeing. Once he retired from the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, John dived further into helping his community. When he isn't volunteering, he enjoys spending his time reading and gardening. The staff who nominated him said, John has a great sense of humor and is quick with witty banter. He's an overall great guy who is humble and loves to help others. And Pat is a kind of person who can talk to anyone. During the holiday season, she goes caroling to people who are homebound. She worked with the Bolton Health Committee to shop, wrap, and distribute gifts during the holiday season. Pat is one of the volunteer drivers for home-delivered meals in the Bolton area in the northern part of Lake George. While her route should only take about 45 minutes to complete, she cares so much about the people she serves that it is not unusual for the staff to find Pat returning 2 hours after she left. The team at Warren County Office for the Aging described Pat as a wonderful person, kind, open, and helpful. Even though Pat is always on the go, the nutrition program is grateful that they can count on Pat to take a last-minute route. Pat is a native New Yorker, born in Brooklyn, New York, but she grew up on Long Island and in Red Hook. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Math and worked as a programmer at the IBM in Poughkeepsie for 30 years. She moved to Bolton in 2007 and enjoys the outdoors and visiting new places with her daughter. When asked about volunteering, Pat says, just do it. Find an area you're interested in that needs help, and separate from your own career.
Well, please extend the congratulations and the appreciation of the board to both deserving candidates.
Thank you.
We should give him a round of applause.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Dasher to the podium. Norm?
Thank you very much. After I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Mr. Marino, he suggested that perhaps it might be time just to give the board a quick update on things that are going on at the Hyde. And so I've got some prepared remarks. I'll go off my prepared remarks, so I tend not to ramble. How's that? First of all, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to give a brief update on the status and activities currently underway at the Hyde Collection. Last year, 2018, the Hyde hosted more than 230 events, attracting 25,000 visitors to the Glens Falls campus. We often hear the visitors refer to the Hyde as a hidden gem, but there's nothing invisible about the 6 to 10 new and different exhibitions being offered in the 5 galleries each year, not including the permanent collection on display in the historic house. It's estimated that the Hyde is responsible for a $3 million economic impact annually. A Wall Street Journal review of the Hyde Collection a few years ago said Hyde House would be an honorable addition to a city of any size. It would indeed, and since becoming the Chief Executive Officer in December, I've taken several steps to make sure the world knows what incredible institution Glens Falls has in the Hyde Collection. The quality of the collection is indisputable, with artwork by such famed artists as Degas, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Renoir, Warhol, Kelly. Our vault is comparable to that of many large metropolitan museums. In fact, the Hyde has lent its collection to 22 museums in 14 different states and 15 museums in 8 foreign countries. Our curatorial team designs exhibitions drawn from the museum's permanent collection of more than 5,000 works. Our educators then develop programming inspired by the exhibitions to help participants better understand the time in which the featured artists were working, the concepts and techniques used, and how both apply to our world today. For instance, a recent exhibition by Washington County artist Jacob Houston features his acrylic paintings of idyllic scenes from a bird's eye view. Our curator paired it with the architectural etchings of Albert E. Flanagan, works with such magnificent detail that visitors are using magnifying glasses, which we provide to see every detail. Just a few days ago, the Hyde opened a new exhibition of paintings, photographs, and prints of New York rooftops from the early part of the 20th century by artist John Sloan. The Sloan exhibition is on loan from the Penn State University Palmer Museum of Art. The exhibition is currently in the planning our exhibitions in the future are currently in the planning process out to 2023, with our 60th anniversary celebration being a big year for us in 2023. In the fall of this year, we will open an exhibition of art by Pablo Picasso. In my rounds and meeting people throughout the community, I've met some people and I say, have you been to the Hyde recently? And they'll say, well, I went to the Hyde on an 8th grade field trip. Why would I go back? The Hyde has a permanent collection in the historic house, but in the 5 galleries, there are between 6 and 10 new exhibitions every year. So there's always something new to see. The Hyde also offers programs that include artists in residence, art and yoga, a 4-week workshop to learn the aspect of art, concerts, movies, lectures, and panel discussions, as well as themed tours, fashion shows, storytelling, and much more. As important as these events are, our mission is to provide an experience and free programming. We offer free tours for schools, for group homes, for extended care facilities serving people with dementia, and admission for all children, veterans, students, active military, and their families is free every day. Every Wednesday, we offer free admission to seniors 60 and over. As a result, actually, the majority of visitors that come to the Hyde don't pay. Once a month, we offer Second Sunday, which is a day when admission is free for everyone, and our educators offer a free STEAM STEAM-based activity, not STEM, but STEAM, science, technology, art, engineering, and math. The entire month of December, we thank our community by offering Pay for What You Wish, which can be free, nothing at all, or it can be a donation of the person's choosing. Every week, our educators provide free children programs for parents with infants all the way through to teenagers. Children and their caregivers are introduced to age-appropriate concept of art in the galleries at our historic house, then go into our art studio where they create artwork based on what they've learned. Since 2016, our attendance at these programs has grown by 208%. So the Hyde now provides free hands-on art experiences to nearly 5,000 children a year. Also increasing is the number of collaborations with other regional organizations. We regularly team with Art in the Public Eye, SUNY Adirondack, Skidmore, Albany Institute of History and Art, the University Art Museum at University of Albany, the De Blasis Chamber Series, Saratoga Chamber Players, the Adirondack Theater Festival, and World Awareness Children's Museum, to name a few. Over the past 6 months, we've ramped up those efforts, and we're working on plans now with the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, the Tang Museum, Universal Preservation Hall, and the Glens Falls Symphony. And we continue to seek other partners to collaborate with. Our view in terms of collaboration is the rising tide floats all boats. The better any arts organization does, the better all of us do. We're also extending our marketing efforts to reach a broader audience. We are completely revamping our website in the next several months, and it'll be a whole new look for us, which will be much more accessible, as well as contain even more information. More than 25% of visitors to the Hyde come from out of state, 2% out of the country. 17% of visitors come from New York State, but outside the 3-hour day trip range. Even the 37% of visitors who come to us from the greater capital region are eating at local restaurants, buying gas, and shopping in stores. We are proud of how that contributes to the regional economy, but we aren't content. We want to, and we believe we have the capacity to attract even more visitors from an even greater geographic area. We look forward to celebrating our 60th anniversary in 2023, and we would like to thank the Warren County Board of Supervisors for its support and commitment throughout the years, and we would respectfully request your continued support in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you very much. Now, Ben, Supervisor Driscoll, if maybe you'd like to say a few words in introducing about.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Housing is an issue that is important to our economy, important to our quality of life. I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Robert Landry, Executive Director of the Glens Falls Housing Authority, for a number of years, and I thought it would be a good opportunity this evening to invite Bob up to share some information on opportunities and services that the Housing Authority has available for all residents of Warren County. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll. I sat in one of these chairs in the mid-1990s for 6 years, and I always remember when people came to present, we were just meeting during the daytime then, the ones that were listened to the most were guys who started out by saying, "I'll be brief." So I will be brief this evening. Glens Falls Housing Authority is actually celebrating its 50th year of operation this year. We were established in 1969. At that point in time, we built La Rose Gardens in Glens Falls, which is a 50-unit low-income family project available to any resident of the county. Actually, any resident of the United States can live there. We then, in 1971, built Stitchman Towers. It was the first affordable, low-income senior facility in the area. Has 81 apartments there. In 1981, we then built Cronin High Rise on Ridge Street in Glens Falls and added another 100 apartments there, again, which are available to any county resident, and rents are based on income. So in some cases, if you've got an individual in your community that's low income, they want to move into the city and into one of the high rises, the rent is based on that. In 1984 is where the Housing Authority really ventured into becoming a county-wide agency with the services that we provide by bringing on board what was called the Section 8 program and today is called the Housing Choice Voucher program. We virtually have residents in all of your communities that are presently served by this Housing Choice Voucher program, which is a rental subsidy program so they can live in the communities that they're at. Their rents would be based on the income that they have, and these are permanent housing vouchers. So we definitely like to see individuals who graduate off the Section 8 program and become self-sufficient, but if they don't, they're actually a permanent voucher that can be used. In 1985, we ventured a little bit outside of the city and outside of the county when we were asked to build, and we today operate Earl Towers in Hudson Falls, which is another 75 units of low-income senior housing that we have. So any of those facilities that we own and operate in Glens Falls, don't let the name deceive you, is available to anybody who is a resident of the county, including the Section 8 program. In 2003, we took that Section 8 program and we became involved with the federal government in what they call the First-Time Home Buyers program. That program can be coupled with programs that either the county or communities have to assist people, low-income individuals, to get that American dream, to be able to own a home and have some assistance for 15 years. How that works is you can take a Section 8 voucher, and instead of us sending a monthly rental check to a landlord, we could send a monthly check to a bank who is holding a mortgage to help those people have a home. So if you've got homes in your community that maybe residents in the community would like to buy and they need some assistance, our First-Time Home Buyers program would help with that. In 2008, there was a need to start to address the homeless situation in the county. The Housing Authority applied for and received what they call Shelter Plus Care Vouchers. Again, this is a rental assistance program. How it works is it's designed to take people who are documented homeless and provide them with housing, subsidized housing, in whatever community they want to live in, but requires them also to participate in mental health or substance abuse issues that they may have, hence the Shelter Plus Care. We provide the shelter, and we coordinate with many agencies in the county who then provide care for these individuals through case management. We were then approached in 2014 by the Veterans Administration to take on what they call the Vash Program. VASH stands for Veterans Administration Supportive Housing. And what that is, it's very similar to the Shelter Plus Care program. It's a rental subsidy program where we'll help pay rents for housing for disabled or veterans who need case management. We work with the Veterans Administration to coordinate this. Veterans Administration provides case management for these individuals, and the Housing Authority assists them with the housing portion of it. So it's a great combination, and it works well. I know a lot of people say, well, geez, do we have that big of a homeless population? We're actually required by HUD every year to conduct a point-of-time count to try to estimate how many homeless individuals there are in the county. Our last count was done in January of this year, and we came up with a number of approximately 275 individuals. Where are they? Because you don't see them. Most of them are what we call couch surfers. They live with me until I say you got to move on, and then they go live someplace else until they say they've got to move on, but they have no permanent address. So there is a homeless component here in the county that needed to be addressed. We're doing that through Shelter Plus Care and through the Vash program, and at the present time we have about 85 individuals who are housed through this program. In 2019, our 50th year, there's some changes coming down from HUD. HUD is looking to basically move on from the public housing platform. That's what funds the 3 high-rises that we have in the Rose Gardens family complex, and is moving them towards an affordable housing platform for funding. That's a wonderful thing for us. We're hoping to, through grants and cooperation with the federal government and the state, get enough money to renovate all of those high-rises that I mentioned to you. We plan on completely tearing down the Rose Gardens, which was built in 1969, and replacing it with a green, environmentally efficient 50-unit project, again, for low-income families. Out of that, what we hope to become as an agency is the place for any of you to come to if you have affordable housing questions or needs. Every community, I did attend a session at the Crane Library just recently, and some of the supervisors were there. One of the things that we all have in our communities are a school that's not used anymore, a grocery store that closed, and in some cases, through the Affordable Housing Network, monies are available to maybe renovate these facilities into smaller complexes, not a 50-unit like LaRose Gardens, but in your communities, smaller communities, 10 or 12 units would work out real nice. So we're hoping to, by next year, if not by early 2021, to appear before you again and explain to you what we can do to help you bring affordable housing to your communities. I gave Amy a sheet of how to contact the Housing Authority, the individuals who run the programs down there. We're just a phone call or an email away, and we'd be more than happy to help you at any time.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming out this evening. Now, Supervisor Bramer, would you like to do the introduction?
Sure, thank you. Jason Van Dreisch is here representing Front Porch Forum, which is an online community networking system, and it's been operating in Washington County much longer than that over in Vermont. And I think it's an exciting opportunity for some of our residents, especially rural people who might not be connecting otherwise. So I'll let you speak to it, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Bramer, for the invitation to speak. My name is Jason Van Dreisch, and I'm from Front Porch Forum. Front Porch Forum is a small Vermont company, and we're in the business of helping neighbors connect and build community. Since 2006, we've been hosting regional networks of online neighborhood forums where clearly identified nearby neighbors share postings about all kinds of topics. And rather than trying to describe that in the abstract, I thought I'd read you just a couple of postings, and these are some of the standouts. Most of them are just routine stuff that neighbors talk about, but I wanted to give you just a flavor for what kinds of things are made possible because of Front Porch Forum. This one here was from some years ago. A neighbor, actually in my own neighborhood, wrote, "Thanks to the wonderful crowd of neighbors who helped us move, it was humbling and heartwarming to have 36 people show up on the weekend after Thanksgiving in response to our Front Porch Forum posting and move all our things down the street to our new home in an hour and a half." Just a couple others real quick. This afternoon, Albert the cat appeared back at our door. We're very happy to have him home, and we're very appreciative of all the people who provided tips and support. We're very fortunate to live in such a neighborhood. Moreover, we feel very fortunate to have Front Porch Forum as a resource to turn to in these kinds of situations. I had put up several signs around the neighborhood, but the net result of that seemed to be zero. FPF is where it's at in terms of getting this kind of news. And finally, wow, we stopped counting the number of kind and generous neighbors who offered us a fridge to borrow. It was at least 15. Thank you to everyone for your generosity and support of our local business, and thanks to Front Porch Forum for giving us a way to access that generosity. So now a few specifics. Front Porch Forum started in Burlington, Vermont when our co-founders, Michael Wood Lewis and his neighbor, his wife Valerie, who were new to town, found that they were struggling to meet their neighbors. So they started a neighborhood email list and quickly found that it met a need, that 2/3 of their neighbors signed up within a month or two. And Front Porch Forum just grew from there. And today, Front Porch Forum has 165,000 members across the state of Vermont, representing every community in the state, and that includes 10,000 small businesses and nonprofits and over 2,000 local officials. In many of the communities where we serve, there are more Front Porch Forum members than there are households in the community. Our members post on just about any kind of topic that neighbors might discuss in person. Common issues include lost pets, mechanic recommendations, block parties, break-ins, helping neighbors in need, politics, buy, sell, and give items, wildlife sightings, and much more. Our staff compile the day's postings into an emailed newsletter that typically goes out around 5 p.m. each day. Front Porch Forum puts neighborhood news and discussion into folks' daily routines so that over time people feel more connected to their neighbors. And when they do bump into each other in person, the ice is already broken and there's something to talk about. What we find is that this daily neighborly interaction helps to rebuild the ties that really have frayed in recent years with the fast-paced lives that many of us live today. As of June 2019, we're pleased to offer our free service here in Warren and Washington counties as well as in Vermont, and this is our first significant expansion outside of Vermont. We expanded a few years ago to Argyle and Cambridge at the invitation and request of some folks in each of those communities, including Bob Henke in Argyle. And it went so well that we decided to go bigger, and we're delighted to be working with neighbors, local businesses, nonprofits, and public officials to bring Front Porch Forum to this region. So I'd like to conclude with just a few answers to the question of why Front Porch Forum, because you might be wondering, with all the social media options out there, what's the big deal? Why is this one special? So here are a few reasons. First, Front Porch Forum is about community. We're a mission-driven organization whose core focus is on helping neighbors connect and build community. Second, we're local. We're a Vermont-based and locally owned business, and our service is specifically designed for the rural towns, villages, and small cities of northern New England and New York. Third, FPF is free. Neighbors, local businesses, community nonprofits, and local officials can all sign up and participate in their local community Front Porch Forum at no cost. And most of the cost of providing our service is covered by ads from local businesses. We work with local businesses to help them connect with neighbors. Fourth, Front Porch Forum is useful. It's a lot of work, as I'm sure all of you know as local officials, to get people's attention for anything at the community level, whether it's organizing a block party or updating a town plan. With Front Porch Forum, you only have to do that organizing work once, because once that mechanism is in place, it's an incredibly useful community-wide communication tool. Front Porch Forum is also thoughtfully moderated. Every single posting is reviewed by our online community managers, actual human beings, before it's published. And this helps ensure that the conversation stays civil and neighborly. Next, Front Porch Forum is simple and easy. You post whenever you like, and then once a day, you get a clearly formatted e-newsletter in your email that takes about 5 minutes to read, and then you go on with your day. And last, FPF is built for privacy. What you post is between you and your neighbors. Nothing that gets posted on Front Porch Forum is ever findable on Google, and you will never be tracked or spammed, and that's our commitment. So at this point, I'm really here just to introduce the service and to offer 3 simple things that you can do if this sounds like something that you feel would be useful in your community to help get it up and running. One is to sign up, and you all have a little flyer at your place with our web address, frontporchforum.com. And it's very straightforward. You go to the website, you put in your address, it uses that to match you with your forum, and then you put in your name and email and the password, and you're done. There's no credit cards, there's nothing other than that. It's very simple, very basic, and that's really all we want to know about people, because this is really about neighbors connecting with neighbors, not about us collecting information like some of the big guys do. Second is to spread the word, to tell friends and neighbors about Front Porch Forum and encourage them to sign up. Each of the forums that we've set up is currently in what's called registration-only mode, which means that people can sign up, but they can't post yet. And that's because each one of them will automatically turn on when it gets to 50 people signed up. So the more the word spreads, the quicker this will become a useful resource for folks all around the region. And third, be in touch. My name is Jason Van Drysch. I'm Jason at frontporchforum.com. I'm the lead on this expansion, and I'd be delighted to answer any questions now or as a follow-up by phone or email as we work with folks around the region to get up and running.
Thank you. Thank you for the material.
Great. Thank you.
Now I'd like to declare a public hearing open on the proposed Warren County Local Law Number 6 of 2019 2019, entitled "A Local Law to Establish a Sustainable Energy Loan Program." And I'll ask the clerk to read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the adoption of a proposed local law number 6, for the year 2019, entitled "A Local Law to Establish a Sustainable Energy Loan Program, Open, Fee-Based, in Warren County." Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on May 17, 2019, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on June 19, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the Supervisors' Rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center, Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed local law number 6 for the year 2019 will be heard concerning same. A copy of said local law is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors office at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Is there anyone here wishing to address the board regarding this local law? Mr. Whitehead? Please state your name for the record.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I'd just like to say that I'm fully in support of this proposal, and I'd like to see something similar, if at all possible, to help out the people that may have to upgrade their wastewater systems around the lake as we put in these very valuable transfer laws, septic transfer laws. And I've been to a number of those town meetings where people express their concerns, and one of them keeps on coming up: how do I pay for this? And I believe that that deserves to be answered, and this would be a great way to do it if we could do something similar. So
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board regarding this local law? There being no one, I will close the public hearing. Report of the chairman of the board. On May 24th, a plug for Bolton, I attended the opening exhibit for Landscapes Lost and Found at the Bolton Museum. If you get a chance, I really highly recommend you take in that exhibit. It's over 50 pieces of art representing over 200 years of history of our region through the eyes of numerous local artists, and there was an interesting article that appeared in the Times Union, I believe this morning, and I would refer you to that as well. On the 29th, I attended the ribbon cutting, I guess you could say, the opening ceremony for Wood Park. It was a wonderful ceremony, and it really culminates quite a few years of really collaborative and partnering that went on to make that project happen. The county, of course, was a major partner with that project, and it was a wonderful affair. That evening, I attended the Better Angels meeting that was held at Crandall Library. I was joined there by Supervisor Hogan, Supervisor Driscoll, Supervisor Loeb, and Supervisor Simpson. And I think all found it very interesting. On the 30th, I attended numerous committee meetings: Health and Human Services, Social Services, Public Works, and Budget. On the 31st, County Facilities and Support Services. On June 11th, I attended the Public Works meeting, which primarily dealt with the railroad. And that afternoon, I attended a joint meeting of Personnel and Finance at the college for the presentation of SUNY Adirondack 2020 budget. And as usual, President Duffy, you and your team did an excellent job in the presentation. And then on the 12th, I attended a meeting on the Countryside Capital Improvement Plan, which I believe the committee and all of you should be receiving here shortly, and I believe that'll also be incorporated into the county's planning efforts, capital planning efforts. And just let me, kudos to the staff and everyone who's involved in that. Edna, you especially, in leading the charge to develop a capital plan for Countryside, and, if you would, a blueprint for the future, for future improvements at Countryside. And that brings us to today. Supervisor Bramer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Environmental Concerns and Real Property met on May 30th, and we have some resolutions in your packet tonight. The one that I want to highlight is a resolution approving the county moving forward with Climate Smart Communities certification, which I think is very exciting and historic for us to be passing today, as the state is passing the Community and Climate Protection Act, which will be establishing greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for the entire state, and that's really exciting in my mind as well. I think that's all I have for my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Support Services did meet. We have 5 resolutions that are in the packet. They are self-explanatory. The interesting thing about this committee is that we have 10 different departments, and they're doing a first-rate job. Administrator, county attorney, clerk of the board, the county clerk, IT, self-insurance, weights and measures, our auditor, purchasing, and board of elections. A lot of the activity, which apparently has been growing in our committee because the committee meetings last so long, which when you look at 5 resolutions, you say, what can be possibly going on? So I recommend everybody should come to our meetings. There's a bit of drama, a bit of excitement, sometimes some heat, but I also bring pastries. That's the reason I bring them. I want everybody to come. Before I also want to mention the Board of Elections. There is a resolution in the packet basically for their maintenance and housekeeping to approve some printing contracts. But what they present at the Board of the Support Committee is a lot of discussion about what's coming to all of the towns, and that's the electronic poll books and new voting machines. And you're going to start seeing them this year. I think the electronic poll books, unless I have that wrong, is that correct, Mike? Is it this year? I believe so. But certainly next year, and the new voting machines. The new voting machines, I do not think they're going to put in before the presidential election. They want to prevent any sort of chaos. Probably a good idea. And before I give up my voice, I want to just mention something about our health department and Edna's department. She may not have seen it in the paper, but there was in the paper, in the Post-Star today, buried in it, there was a section about the effectiveness of the WIC program supported by our health department, and how it has decreased the obesity in the young kids from age 1 through 4. A definite positive movement for the health of our country, and it's due to the hard work of our nurses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Loeb. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report this evening.
Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health, Human, and Social Services met on May 30th. We had reports from 5 of the departments, and as a result of that, we have 14 resolutions, 260 through 273. I'm not going to bother to read them all to you. If you've had a chance, you know what they're involved with. But just they're authorizing and extending agreements. We have some for continuation of contracts, appointing members to boards, authorizing a submission of a grant for the New York Connects, and an application amending agreement with Field and Good to purchase and distribute fresh produce to the WIC participants. So those are just a few, so I would appreciate your support of all of those resolutions. I also attended the opening of Wood Park, and it really was a wonderful ceremony, and I was glad that so many of us were there. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't know, I've got good news to report tonight. The constitutional amendment for the Health and Safety Land Bank, there was the piece of legislation that identified the land for that would allow any of these projects to move forward. That passed the Assembly last night, and early this morning it was passed in the Senate. So we want to thank Assemblyman Speck and Senator Little, when we see them, for all their hard work on this. This has been a long road for a constitutional amendment.
Absolutely.
So Public Works did meet May 30th. We actually had 2 meetings this past month, and the first one, we have 2 resolutions that came out of that meeting. Resolution 275, which is a contract with Town and Country Bridge and Rail to provide guide rail services, and also 276, which is amending an agreement with R.S. Lynch and Company for updating or modifying our current Warren County, New York State, or New York Solid Waste Management Plan. And in that meeting, we also heard a report on the fish stocking activities that the county undertook this year, and they had stocked over 25,000 trout. And I want to say we may want to rethink some of this. Until we get a fair shake from this guy behind me, we need to quit supplying them with 18-inch rainbows on the Spoon River. So, but maybe that's working out for us. I don't know. But kudos to the Fish Hatchery Department and DPW for the work that they do. They really provide an important service for our county, supplying them. We also talked about the railroad, the RFPs, and the respondents. And the committee decided to move forward with negotiating with United Rail, which at that meeting we appointed a negotiating team, which I have full faith in, and I think they're going to do a great job putting us in a great position with whatever the outcome is. They did meet and they strategized, came up with their parameters amongst the members, and I believe they're scheduling their first negotiating session with United Rail. So that actually, I just mixed up the two meetings. So June 11th was part of that decision-making process. So that's it. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan.
I'm snapping over here. You caught me. Thank you, Chairman. As we move forward with county climate smart initiatives, I just want to remind everyone that Cornell Cooperative Extension is one of our premier sources of information and education on green living, on all sorts of stuff for that. This month was another busy month at CCE. Cornell conducted over 30 bike safety rodeos at almost all of the elementary schools in the county. They taught nutrition education classes in Glens Falls, North Warren, Warrensburg, and Queensbury school districts. The plant sale netted over $3,000 for the 4-H and Master Gardener programs. And Warren County Soil and Water gave a $1,000 grant to start school gardens in interested area schools. For anyone who's on the committee and anyone who's interested, the next CCE board meeting is Monday, coming up at 7 p.m. in Warren.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
I sorted my socks before, in case anybody's wondering. OCTAX had a meeting on June 4th. We have one resolution, 274 came out of that. We funded 3 events that we hadn't funded in the regular go-around. I also sit on 2 committees for the court system in Warren County. We had meetings, organizational meetings for both. The one committee I sit on is the Warren County Supreme Court Law Library. I'm a library guy. I like libraries, and I'm glad to sit on the board. But I have to tell you, I was sadly disappointed in our current law library. I don't know if any of you have been in it. It's minuscule to start with. Not only is it minuscule, but it's poorly proportioned. It's long and narrow. It's very claustrophobic. They haven't put any books or furniture in it yet. The law library is important to Warren County. There are a lot of attorneys and people in the private sector that come to our law library and use the facility. I grant you there's a lot of what's in most law libraries that you can go online and get, but it's not the same as being able to sit down with several different books and open them up to certain things that you're interested in looking at that you can't do on your computer. So I think it's really disappointing that I think all of you should at some point in time just stick your head and take a look at it. It's tiny. It's a disgrace. That's it.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm going to follow the lead of the 2 supervisors immediately to my left and yield the floor back.
Okay. Very good. Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facilities met about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Resolutions 248, 249. One's on the airport. That's pretty self-explanatory. 249 also is authorizing a buildings and ground, also authorizing a 6-month lease with D&G Recycling. We will go from the current rent of $4,000. We will lease out 1 bay of 2 bays that we currently have in that building. The rent will go to $6,500 a month for the 6 months. And then the committee and then this board will decide if they want to go further or whatever the strategy they want to pursue. I did receive the letter from, I know a lot of supervisors were asking about the letter from the FAA. It had not been received yet for the last committee meeting, so I will read it briefly. This is the FAA saying they basically have stopped the runway expansion. Dear Mr. Moore, thank you for submitting the January 4th, 2019 alternative concept and the ongoing environmental assessment for runway 119. Concept outline using a 1,000-foot runway extension with a 1,000-foot displaced threshold, using declared distances instead of using a full 1,000-foot extension with no displaced threshold. An extensive review of this information determined that the existing runway length of 5,000 feet appears to be sufficient to accommodate existing and even forecast operations at GFL. Our review of the submitted data also confirms there are limited, if any at all, operational impacts for specific jet operators at GFL. This analysis has determined that the current runway length of 119 meets the airport's operating needs. Therefore, the proposed runway extension project is not needed with any additional justification or information. Sincerely yours, Evelyn Martinez. She's the manager of New York Airport District Office. So that's behind us. So what are we going to do to decrease the expenses out there at the airport? And I've been meeting with Don McGraw, Kevin Hajos. Obviously, I think most people know we have McFarland has been granted $40,000 to help market all the land around there for us. But a lot of good things are happening at the airport I don't think we ever even hear about. So I'm going to ask, is Kevin here? Yeah, Kevin Hajos to come on up, if you would, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection,
I'd like to have him.
Mr. Hajos,
Thank
good
you.
evening. I'm good.
So this past weekend, we had an event out at the airport. It was a free event. It's called the Young Eagles. The Experiment Aircraft Association puts on this event twice a year here at Glens Falls. The gentleman who usually puts it on was sick this year, so Don didn't actually know about it until a couple days before the event, but Rich Air did know about the event. The Young Eagles is a program that is dedicated to teaching or showing kids about aviation and flight. They've done it since 1992, so they're on 27 years of introducing these flights. It's for kids anywhere from 8 to 17 years old, and basically they go get a free ride in an airplane. This past Saturday's event, we had approximately 60 kids go for a free ride around the Lake George region, and we had 6-7 different pilots that donated their time to take these kids up. So it's a great event. Again, it's not a revenue, but it actually highlights the airport and some of the things that we're doing out there.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Hajos? You're welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to take 2 minutes now to announce something that I've been working on. It's very exciting. As everybody knows, I've been the last 2, 3, 4, 5 months very concerned about the loss of population in New York State and the trends were going on. 48 out of 62 counties have lost population in the last 8 years. It's a huge concern of mine. It's a huge concern of every business owner I talk to, every school superintendent I talk to. As you know, I said at the last meeting, we're now at the lowest amount of students in New York State in 30 years. And that's very disconcerting to me. So I want to I sat back and I said, what can I do, little old Doug Beatty, do to try to turn this tide? So I formulated a committee. It's called 2030 task force. 2030 is, our goal is going to be to start turning this around, this flood loss here in Warren County, and start getting people to move back into Warren County. I think we have a phenomenal county with a ton of selling points. So I've asked key people across this county to be a participant, and the response was overwhelming. Not one person turned me down. They all want to be part of this committee. They want to be part of it in a positive way of what can we do, what are we doing good, what can we do better, what should we stop doing. And so at this time, I'm going to announce that the committee has been formed. It will be meeting next week. The first committee will be meeting next week, 6 o'clock. And I'd like to tell you who the members are at this time and thank them in advance for participating. I did get notice today that Kate Hogan, Judge Hogan, has got to decline because of legal issues. She sent me this. She thought she could be part of the committee. She was all excited. And then she said, Doug, I found this in the law, blah, 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 and I just don't feel comfortable. And so unfortunately, Judge Kate Hogan will not be on the committee. But she says, I'm behind you 100%. On the committee is going to be one of my dear friends and a phenomenal supervisor, Peter McDivitt. He's agreed to sit on the committee. Dr. Doug Huntley, Superintendent of Schools at Queensbury, will be on the committee. I think one of the sharpest guys in the whole county, PE, Travis Whitehead, will be on the committee. I reached out to Ed Moore, and I said, Ed, you have a phenomenal business model here that's successful in Warren County. I would love if Tyler Herrick and Zach Moore, his two key people, could be part of this committee. He said, I love the idea. They have agreed to be on the committee. They both are young millennials with families. Why are they staying here? Why do they want to grow? I think their input's going to be vital. They will be on the committee. Nancy Underwood, who's a family lady and who works with immigrants in Saratoga, will be on the committee. Mike Biddle, who's president in Chamber of Commerce, will be on the committee. And I will be reaching out to one more individual, a medical professional, in the very near future, and that medical professional will be added to the committee. And finally, I'd like to ask Mr. Ryan Moore, our county administrator, if he would be gracious enough to sit on this committee. I wanted to do that publicly because... Pardon me? So, Mr. Moore, would you be on the committee, please?
Sure. I'll assist how I can.
Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see, we have a very diverse group of individuals, from Democrats to independents to business owners to school superintendents. And the final person I added tonight, and she's been gracious enough to accept because we did have that opening, is Dr. Duffy from SUNY Adirondack. So Dr. Duffy, thank you very much for wanting to participate. I think you're going to be a huge addition. And this committee will again be meeting next week for the first time. And our objective is one objective only. How do we keep people in the county? How do we get people to move into the greatest county in New York State? So I'm excited about it. I'm not a guy who sits on my behind and does nothing when I see a problem. And this is a huge problem. I think it's the #1 problem in the state. And hopefully we can come up with some ideas and do some things differently. I know our southern neighbors, Saratoga County, is one of 9 counties and is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And our neighbor to the north, Essex County, is having one of the biggest decreases in the state. We had a decrease in population from 2010 to 2018 of 2.6%. Last year we decreased in population, and I'm very concerned that the next census will show a decrease for this past 10 years. So, Mr. Chairman, thanks for the time to explain that. It's called 2030 Task Force, and everybody stay tuned. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor McGowan.
Well, I'll give my time up to Doug Beatty there, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have a report.
All right. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Finance did meet on June 6th. I would like to thank Supervisor Simpson for sitting in my absence, so I appreciate it sincerely. Resolutions 246, 247, 283 through 295 are in your packet. 283 and 284 are roll call resolutions, and they are establishing the capital project to construct the airport T hangars. And then 284 allows the county to appropriate the funds to the Department of Public Works for this project. 285 is approving a tentative operating budget for SUNY Adirondack for their next fiscal year. We did have a joint personnel and finance meeting on June 11th, and as our chairman had remarked, that they did a phenomenal job, and it is a very responsible budget. They're actually even projecting a 6.9% decrease this year, so for the modest increase that they're asking for, I'm very proud. And if anybody has any questions, President Duffy is here to answer them. 288 was an updated resolution. There was one line that was not added in there, and that was to write off a portion of the debt for $132 for a resident at the former Westmount Health Facility. And then finally, 289 addresses a settlement in the matter of Russell Herbert versus the County of Warren, and it's for the amount of $2,500. No treasurer report today, and that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stokel. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee did meet on May 30th. At that meeting, Caitlin Wargo from ANCA, the Adirondack North Country Association, gave us an update on what they do and what programs they're involved in. Also, Janet Kennedy from Lakes to Locks was there. We have contracts with both of these organizations, so it's nice to invite them and explain to the board exactly what we're paying for. Besides that, we had a discussion about the fund balance at the end of 2018. Also, what's been appropriated since the beginning of the year in kind of one-time expenses. I guess the main thing of the meeting was the discussion on establishing or prioritizing some reserves. That's going to be in an upcoming meeting, hopefully to be scheduled during this cycle of committee meetings. And so if you have a priority, you should come and let us know. Also, Supervisor Hogan mentioned the Soil and Water Conservation District and the Community Conservation Program. Soil and Water got an increase in their Part C dollars here a couple years ago from New York State through the EPF, and the board of directors set aside a chunk of money for a community conservation program where organizations or school classes or schools themselves can apply for up to $1,000 for a conservation initiative that they might want to attempt or take a shot at, and the board will review them and award $1,000. The organization will do the work or do what they want with the money, and Soil and Water will reimburse them. So thank you for mentioning that. It brought it to my mind, and I wanted to make sure everybody knew about it. And that's my report.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Hyde.
Thank you, no report.
Supervisor Garrity.
I missed my second personnel meeting in probably a year and a half, and Supervisor Frazier handled it very well for us. There's one resolution from the personnel meeting. I did attend the joint meeting at SUNY, and there again, you know, the college has a lot of challenges, but they step up every year and do a good job with their budget. I did attend an AATB meeting up in Tucker Lake on the 1st and 2nd of June. They gave a very good presentation about the census coming up, how important it is for all of us to participate, make sure our communities participate in the census collection going up. So Oh, no, it was a quiet month for me, but I'll be back.
Very good. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Criminal Justice Public Safety met on May 31st. There's 5 resolutions before you, number 250 through 254. 2 are for authorization of out-of-state travel. 3 of them are authorized in agreements. 1 is for safety evaluation for radio towers. 1 is for social media monitoring for schools. And 1 is for a limited police presence at Grace State. My report.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No reports.
Peter.
Thank you. Looking forward to going to the great town of Bolton tomorrow and to get trained on the importance of clean water, conforming, non-conforming septic systems, and the whole process of maybe keeping Lake George as clean as we possibly can. We vote on these issues periodically, and so maybe if I wouldn't know a septic system from an apple pie, so I need to I need some help. So with so I look forward to learning something and being in a position to make intelligent decisions in the future, and just maybe on a lighter sports side, it's amazing the level of baseball talent we have in our surrounding area. When we see Ticonderoga being a New York State champion, when we see Whitehall being a New York State champion, when we see Schuylerville just barely, they ran into a buzzsaw with a real tough opponent. But it's nice to see that level of high school talent in our general area. So kudos to the high schools involved.
Well, Peter, and we appreciate your interest in the Bolton program. Thank you.
Just smell it and taste it, Peter.
I knew that was coming. You never disappoint, I'll tell you. Report of the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have an excellent honoree for Employee of the Month for June, but he has a Little League game tonight, so we'll postpone that award until July. He's a coach, not a player. Child labor laws. There are 2 employee milestones this month. Both of them have 20 years of service. Mental Health Director Rob York and Correction Officer Ryan Tours. Congratulations to both of you, and thanks for your dedication and long service. I'm also very pleased to report that our county clerk, Pam Vogel, was named 2019 Clerk of the Year by the New York State Association of County Clerks. So congratulations and thanks to Pam, as well as her hardworking employees in both DMV and the clerk's office, who do a great job for us. They're the face of the county to a lot of our residents. As the chairman mentioned, I attended the Charles R. Wood Park grand opening. I was very impressed with what's been done there. Would encourage everyone to go check it out if you haven't already done so. On Wednesday, July 5th, I met with Judge Gary Hobbs and representatives of all parties that are going to utilize the new county arraignment court, including the DA, the public defender, and all of the police agencies. Everybody looks to be on the same page. We're shooting for a June 28th start for that court. And the courtroom itself looks great, and I want to commend all the county employees who made that happen, especially Frank Morehouse and his team in DPW. The courtroom's located across the hall from emergency services in the former booking room of the old jail, and I'm sure that Frank would be happy to show you if you haven't already been. Our health insurance working group met twice over the past 2 weeks to pursue some service enhancements and cost savings opportunities for our health insurance program, and I'm happy to report the costs so far this year are well within the budget. On Monday the 10th, I participated in a conference call with the Columbia County EMS regarding their countywide EMS plan, and I'll relay that next week at our county EMS task force meeting. On Tuesday the 11th, as many of you did, I attended the SUNY Adirondack budget meeting. Thank you to President Duffy and your staff for staying within the 2% that we had certainly planned for and budgeted. Thank you, as well as for the great job you do. And last Friday, I met with the railroad negotiating team that Supervisor Simpson mentioned earlier to set parameters for negotiations with United Rail. I've also been staying in close touch with all the entities that will affect the future of our rail line, including DEC, the Surface Transportation Board in Washington, DOT in Albany, Essex County to the north, and Canadian Pacific to the south, as well as industry experts in the area who are tracking all these moving pieces. It's going to take a little time, a little longer than we wanted, unfortunately, but I think that the county will ultimately end up in a good place, and thanks to all that are involved in that effort. In terms of tonight's resolutions, really only one to speak of from my perspective, Resolution 255 from Economic Growth, which approves the CFA applications. Last year, a member of the board asked for a list of projects. There were several projects that were mentioned and discussed at the Economic Growth meeting, and there are a couple of others that have been added since that I just wanted to mention since they weren't previously mentioned. One of which is a sewer engineering project in the town of Johnsburg. The match would be made up by the town of Johnsburg. It's a $700,000 project in all. And the other one is a Warren County housing needs study, and there is not a required match on that one. If anybody would like details on either of those projects, I'd be happy to go through them now or after the meeting. That's my report.
Thank you. Report of the county attorney.
Yes, I just wanted to take this opportunity to update the board on one outstanding private pay debt from Westmount. The county received a ruling in our favor last week. The resident at issue died in October of 2011 and was survived by 2 children who were the sole heirs to his estate. When the decedent died, he had an outstanding Westmount balance of $111,929. The county hired Tom Clements of the Clements firm to collect this outstanding debt. A lengthy legal battle in both Saratoga County and Warren County Surrogates Court ensued. Upon admission to a private nursing home before being moved to Westmount Health Facility, the decedent owned over $1 million in assets. When admitted to Westmount Health Facility, one of the decedent's sons represented to the county that he was the power of attorney for his father and had access to his father's income and resources in order to pay for his care, and he signed an agreement to that effect. In January of 2012, a bill was mailed to the son stating the outstanding balance, which again was $111,929. The son never objected to this amount owed, and in fact, he spoke to the previous assistant county attorney and agreed to pay the outstanding debt with the sale of his father's annuities. However, the debt was never paid, and Mr. Clements made a motion stating that the son instead impeded the ability to actually pay this debt. As power of attorney for his father's estate, the son misappropriated money in order to avoid this debt to Warren County by either spending the money or hiding it. The court found that the executor of the father's will, the other surviving son, breached his fiduciary duty to ensure that the decedent's assets were used to benefit his creditors and remaining beneficiaries, and as such, the court entered a judgment against the executor in favor of the county for the entire outstanding debt plus 9% interest. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Reading of communications.
We received the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. financial reports dated March 31, 2019 and April 30, 2019. Warren County Probation Department reports of criminal and family workloads for April 2019, and Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. April 2019 payment in the amount of $3,369.
Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution numbers 246 to 295 were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the Warren County website on June 13th. Proposed resolution number 288 was amended after mailing. The revised version was emailed to the members of the board and posted to the county website last week. Printed copies are in your folders. A motion is needed to approve the amendments to resolution number 288 as provided.
Mr. Simpson, Ms. Bramer on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? As amended.
Proposed resolution number 296 was developed after mailing. The resolution was posted to the county website and distributed to the Board of Supervisors last week. Printed copies of that are also in your folders. A motion is needed to bring proposed resolution number 296 to the floor.
Ms. Bramer? Mr. Dickinson on the second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That it? Very good. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address the board regarding any resolutions presently before the board? Yes, sir. Could you step to the podium, state your name and address?
Good evening. Bill Mahar from Warrensburg. Thank you to the board for holding another evening meeting. I'm here to address tonight's resolution to initiate legal action against David Decker to recover monies owed to Warren County. It's public knowledge Mr. Decker is the subject of a criminal proceeding from which he may lose his freedom. There's an even higher probability he will emerge insolvent, bankrupt, and effectively judgment-proof, making any civil judgments obtained of little monetary value. In spite of these circumstances, I believe initiating this action is the right thing to do. The citizens and taxpayers of Warren County are owed this money, and the county board is taking the steps to see that the rights and interests of the county residents are defended, notwithstanding the probabilities of getting paid. There's a second question about the legal action tonight the board may consider, whether or not to name a second defendant. It is my understanding it is believed the statute of limitations has expired, and this second defendant is now unreachable. It's been my experience that arguments can be made on any point of law. In this case, the question of when the clock on the time limitations began ticking is an open question. And that in the same spirit with which the board is considering proceeding Mr. Decker, namely that of taking all available steps to protect the rights and interests of Warren County residents, the second defendant should be included and not preemptively filtered out prior to starting a legal action, even though a judge may dismiss the second defendant early in the process. Lastly, on any pending resolutions that might be related to the presentation by the Hyde that occurred earlier, I think the arts, both fine and performing, are an underappreciated asset and worthy of community support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the board regarding any resolutions? Mr. Whitehead.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I have a brief comment, and I put it in writing, so I want to be accurate. I'll give Amanda a copy afterwards. 3 years ago at committee meeting, Mike Swan told us that over $70,000 is past due 7 years from the Lake George Watershed Coalition. I know this is the first time I've heard of it, and at that point in time 3 years ago, and many of you probably heard about it for the first time then as well. But there were two people in that room that could have shed some light on this, but did not. They did not tell us that a year earlier, they and the Lake George Village Mayor were told by the New York Department of State in an audit the following, and I'm reading from the audit findings from the town of Bolton and the town of Queensbury. It says that the town failed to appropriately manage and oversee Environmental Protection Fund contracts by fully relying on one subcontractor without engaging in sufficient reviews of the work of that subcontractor and without conducting periodic oversight with regard to the costs claimed, filings made, and supporting documentation collected in relation to such contracts. Additionally, they charged that the town neglected their fiduciary duties by allowing a subcontractor to manage and administer the contracts without sufficiently monitoring and reviewing the activities of that subcontractor. These audit findings were released a year before that meeting, and those town supervisors had acknowledged them, but they never told anybody. They never even told their town board members. Shortly after the arrest of David Decker 2 years ago, these audits were discovered by the sheriff's investigation. The towns did not volunteer that information, however. The sheriff had to find it while talking to the New York Department of State people. As the towns started to figure out what had been going on, they discovered that while the towns had collected the money due the county, that the money had not made it to the county. One of the two people in the room today saw that their town paid their debt to the county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other continues to refuse the county, which brings me to Resolution 281 to be considered tonight. The money to pay the county was requested from the state, and the town supervisor certified, at that time it was Dan Steck, that the parties who performed the work under the agreement have been compensated or will be compensated. and also that I am the responsible representative authorized to certify this claim. If that's not good enough to satisfy you, the town, and not David Decker, is responsible to pay the county. The New York Department of State sent a letter dated June 27, 2017 to Supervisor Strow, which acknowledged the recent arrest of the subcontractor and reminded him that as the contractor with the state, the town will take full, I'm quoting here, will take full responsibility for the acts and omissions of its subcontractors. The state paid the town, and along with $3 million other dollars, the town wrote checks made out directly to David Decker, not the county, not anyone else. David Decker, in fact, had his own account number with the town. Now Supervisor Strow would like the county to bear the expenses of suing David Decker for the money rather than going after him himself. The county has already lost $50,000 on this, and now will be spending more trying to collect from an employee that the town did not adequately monitor. Not my conclusion, but the conclusion of the New York Department of State. The town most certainly has a claim of embezzlement available to it, or they can wait to see if the DA can recover any monies. But there are a lot of parties ahead of them, including state and federal tax departments, and several high-priced lawyers who aren't doing the work for him pro bono. You can vote tonight to allow John Strow to fleece the county, or you can ask him to accept his responsibilities. That's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board regarding any resolutions? There being no one, request for roll call. Mr. Dickinson.
281.
Roll call request on 281. Any other requests for roll call? Mr. Garrity.
257.
Roll call request on 257. Any other requests for roll call?
No, but I'd like to make a comment about what Travis said, 281.
Sure, let me just finish roll call. Any other requests for roll call? All righty. Requests, we'll open discussion on 281. Mr. Garrity.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one. I believe it's nothing against the town of Queensbury. Truly, it's nothing against the town of Queensbury. But I believe I was chairman in 2016, and I dealt with the county attorney at the time, and we made numerous pleas to both Boat Landing and the town of Queensbury to please pay the $50,000 to the county. And reluctantly, or after a little arm twisting, Boat Landing paid us what was due. But there was the paper trail wasn't always the greatest, but they did pay us. Queensbury has never paid us. So I agree with Travis in part that I do think the town of Queensbury was remiss because all the rest of the county taxpayers are picking up the bill, and perhaps they were fleeced by this gentleman, but the county has been, it should have really come from the town of Queensbury to the county. We made numerous requests in 2016, and now we're in 2019, and we're still out the money. So I have a tendency to agree with Travis, and I'd like to make the motion to amend 281 to include the town of Queensbury. I don't know how you do that now, or if we can do that, but I just don't think it's right. And I have to agree that, right is right and wrong is wrong. It's unfortunately we're in this circumstance. But numerous times I sat with the county attorneys, and we made numerous pleas to the town and also to the gentleman who's under indictment to please straighten this out. And it never was done. We were always told tomorrow. I'm going over tomorrow. I'm going to the town offices tomorrow. And tomorrow's never come. So I don't like it, but I agree. I do believe the town is responsible for some of this. And Bolton saw fit to make the county whole. And those who were there at the time heard this conversation. We knew it was really late in the game when we found out it was about a project in Bolton Landing. We didn't know for many, many years. Then all of a sudden it's brought up in one of our reports that we're owed this money. So we started, and it never went anywhere. So I have a tendency to agree. I'd like to add Queensberry to what the commenced litigation. I know the town probably isn't happy about it, but I have some questions, and I've been reading the documents, and I think right is right. If we lose, and if the judge says we lost, at least I will feel good about doing my job here. So that's all I got to say.
Are you placing on the floor a proposed amendment on
I would like to
281?
amend 281 to include the town of Queensberry. I will make that a motion, but I don't know if I can.
Can we get our attorney to weigh in?
Just a moment. We have allow the chair. Let's get a second, then we can bring the proposed amendment to the floor. Mr. Dickinson on the second. Mary, would you like to have some input on this? I believe, was that Peter, Mr. McDevitt you asked about?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mary, would you like to weigh in on this?
Sure. My only request is if you add this to the resolution, I would also like you to direct me on what the cause of action would be. Because I don't see one, and I can't file a complaint if I don't have a cause of action, so I'm looking to you guys to tell me what you want me to sue Queensberry for. We don't have a contract, so I can't do breach of contract. I know people have kicked around implied contracts, but I don't even know how we get there. The work was done in Bolton. The work was done on a county road. So Queensberry didn't get any benefit from this work. So I can't even claim an implied contract from this. So I just don't see it. So I need suggestions. I don't have a cause of action right now.
Further discussion on the amendment?
Unfortunately, I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, so I can't help it.
I know. I get that. Well,
I wish I did. I wish I knew something.
Let's continue the discussion. Supervisor Sokol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is on the amendment.
Correct. Instead of an amendment, is this a time-sensitive resolution where it needs to be done tonight? Because if not, instead of amending it, why don't we table it? Supervisor Stroh is not here to answer or do anything to discuss this matter. So if we table it and bring it back next month, is that an option as well?
Just a moment. Yeah, there may be legally a time. I just want, if you'd allow the chair. With the motion on the floor, but the motion for the I'm about to ask him. Supervisor Sokol, are you making a motion to table Resolution 281?
I would if we could send it back to committee.
That would be the motion, would be to table this and set it back to committee. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Beatty on the second to the motion. The motion to table takes precedent. It ends discussion. All those in favor of the motion to table and send it back to committee signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
3 opposed. The ayes, 4 opposed. The ayes have it. That's 281 is being sent back, being tabled and sent back to committee.
The amendment, I believe the amendment is tabled, but the resolution is still on the floor.
That's correct. That would be on the amendment to add Queensberry to 281. Now, is there as continued discussion on 281? We can leave it as is. You can also move that back to committee. You can also amend it again. Mr. Beatty?
I'd like to move that we table 281, again, for the same premise that we just discussed.
We have a motion to table for Mr. Beatty, a second by Mr. Sokol. Motion to table takes precedent. Discussion ends. Regarding a tabling motion, all those in favor of tabling 281 and sending it back to committee, along with the proposed amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Raise your hands.
Could we please have an actual vote?
We could have a roll call. There is a request for a roll call on the motion to table and send back to committee 281. The clerk will read the roll.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? No. Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
I believe it deserved more discussion. No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
There's 505 votes in favor.
505 in favor. The motion to table succeeds.
Could have had more discussion.
Chair will entertain discussion.
I'm not going to discuss...
Point of order? Okay, Mr. Simpson, you raising a point of order?
I just wanted to ask a question. I don't want to ask a question about the resolution. The resolution is tabled.
Okay.
But I do have a question. Was Queensbury ever billed this $50,000 from Warren County?
Were they ever invoiced?
Invoice?
I can't answer that. Do we know whether an invoice was actually ever sent
An
to
invoice
Queensbury?
went to David Decker for the...
Well,
Invoice
right. No,
to
no question
Queensbury.
about that. The question was it sent to Queensbury?
Yes, for $50,000.
The way that this contract worked, the state contracted with the towns, whichever town's turn it was to administer the funding. And then the towns subcontracted to Mr. Decker, who was responsible for paying out anyone that incurred costs. So the proper channel for the county to take at the time was to invoice Mr. Decker.
Did I say one thing?
So what was the...
It's related to that.
Yeah, if you have the
Okay.
floor. Sure, go ahead.
I was a contractor. If I didn't pay my material bill, I got a lien, and so did my supplier get a lien. I would get a bill, so would my supplier. We'd both be brought in to a court. That never happened, by the way. Just to make that clear.
For the record.
Not in 31 years. But I know where it has happened. So that was my question. If, even though, I mean, somehow, somebody's responsible for any agreement that Warren County is engaged in.
This discussion, I'm sure, and more can take place in support services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on other resolutions. Mr. Beatty.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about Resolution 257. Concerning 257, adopting the New York State Climate Smart Communities Pledge, I'll be supporting that today, but I'd like the record to reflect this doesn't mean I'll be blindly supporting expensive initiatives that aren't in the best interest of our county taxpayers and our business community. I'm on board with environmental efforts that help our local tourism industry and green initiatives that produce savings to justify the investment. If a smart climate community designation helps us advance common sense projects, I'll support it. But I'll ask our administration, our DPW engineers, to do a thorough cost-benefit analysis of all the projects going forward. Thank you.
You're welcome. Further discussion on 257. Ms. Bramer.
Thank you. Just in response to that, I absolutely agree that we should be looking at cost-benefit analysis, but this is going to be in the best interest of the county to make investments in our infrastructure, make sure that we are ready for a changing climate, because that is coming. So we can either pay for that stuff now or have floods happen in our communities and have to respond to that. I know we're already having that kind of thing in Thurman and other places in the county, so we can either try to make those investments now or pay for it later and have the damaging effects as well as increased costs. So I hope that everyone will support 257. Thank you.
Further discussion on 257. Mr. Garrity.
I agree with Doug, but I will support the resolution. I do support it, and I do support the initiative, but I do get a little concerned about costing jobs. But I will support the initiative.
Further discussion on 257. Supervisor Thomas.
I will support the resolution also, but I agree with Supervisor Beatty. Looking at the resolution, I have problems with number 5, number 6, and number 10. I think they're very vague. Use climate smart materials management. I'm not sure what that means. Implement climate smart land use. I live in the Adirondack Park. We got enough land use regulations right now. So, and engage in evolving process of climate action. It's all rather vague, and but I do agree with the concept.
Further discussion on 257? Supervisor Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a report that we all got, received over the past month. Peter Bauer is the chairman of the committee. I can't recall the name of the committee, but they did a report on the demographics and population changes within the Adirondacks, the Adirondack Park. Premise being that the loss in population, the loss in jobs, loss in anything was due to the environmental restrictions and burden that the population has to put up with. And what they found out from this extensive study is that any decreases in numbers are actually just are seen equally across the country, and then sometimes not as much in the Adirondacks as in the rest of the country. And in fact, one of the strengths we have to keep our community together was the environmental protections that we're giving to the Adirondacks. Thank you.
You're welcome. Further discussion on 257? Just a moment. I'll come right back to you, Kevin, for a second time. Anyone that wishes to speak for a first time has been heard. Anyone else wishing to speak on 257? Supervisor Simpson?
I can't resist, but it's on our AATV website. But we did, the Adirondack Association of Towns and Villages, in coordination with other agencies, did a study on the population. And if you want to read a report that tells the other side of the story, look on our website and look up APRAP. And APRAP, A-P-P-R-A-P. And that was a report that was, I remember, I believe Brad Dake was involved in that. It's a very informative report, and you want to be careful by just leaning on one report.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak for a first time? If not, I'll return to Mr. Garrity. Mr. Garrity?
Bill, I congratulate you for reading that report. I think it was put out by Protect the Adirondacks, who wants to run us all out of here anyway, so you should take a minute to read that. But the APRAT report is the one where they went around and talked to all the schools and all the areas, but I get that, but just see who authored that report.
Supervisor Brammer.
Thank you so much. I will remind Supervisor Simpson that when we were at the National Association of Counties, many of the representatives discussed the loss of population in their rural areas. This is not unique to the Adirondacks, but what is unique is the Adirondack Park and the land use controls that we have that allow protection of the wilderness as well as populations to be mixed together and to have growth and economic activity, residential buildings right in the middle of the park. They can be combined together and be successful.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The APRAP stands for Adirondack Park Regional Assessment Project, and it's called the Adirondack Park, seeking a balance. My predecessor was involved in that. The other one is the Adirondack Park in Rural America, Economic and Population Trends 1970 to 2010, which does state that in park towns saw an increase since 1970 to 2010 of 11.6% through the years. But and I'll put a plug in for the Common Ground Alliance coming up July 24th, where we look at the analytics of the Adirondacks. You're all welcome to attend.
Thank you. Any further discussion on 257? Yeah. And with that, I'll close discussion then. Anyone else? All right, discussion on 257 is closed. Discussion on other resolutions.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Are we voting on 281 yet or no?
Voted
Not
table.
Tabled.
Okay.
No, 281's been tabled.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Leggett.
249.
Discussion on 249.
Yeah, thank you. County facilities authorizing monthly agreement with D&G Recycled in a portion of county-owned property. One of those bays was used by Office of Emergency Services. Our director was not at that facilities meeting. I just wanted to make sure that renting out the space they were using is
is okay.
Would you like to bring him to the podium? Without objection, Brian, are you available to field some questions?
I'm here.
I see. And Mr. Leggett, you'd like to ask Brian a question?
Yes, sir.
That's right. We rented out one of your bays because it looked like it was vacant. Is it really a vacant bay up there at the recycling building?
Unfortunately, no. There is no vacancy currently. When we have all our equipment in there, we don't have enough space as it is using both bays. So we have some equipment out right now that's being used, but I'm working with Mr. Hajos, and we're looking at some other scenarios and see what we can do. But taking that bay away from me is not going to be pleasant. If we can do something else, that would be great. Right now, if you rent him that bay, you are now putting all of his operation on the wrong side of the security fence. He'll be on the side of the security fence where my equipment is. So unless some work is done to move the fence, which would be very expensive, the only thing that I will add, my office you can see from the committee room. If you're going to have something talking about my stuff or what's going on, please, somebody call me. I'll come up here, take about 45 seconds if I don't hurt myself. Okay?
Any questions for Brian? I think he was pretty clear.
Yeah.
What's your pleasure on 249, Supervisor Leggett?
Like the table.
We have a motion to table 249 to send that back to facilities. Do we have a second to that? We have a second by Mr. Wild to table 249, to send that back to facilities. Discussion. Motion to table takes precedent. Discussion ends. All those in favor of tabling 249 and sending that back to committee signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 249 is tabled. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if this is appropriate time, but we may have a resolution that may come out of my discussion off the floor. I think we all received an email on an invitation to the White House for a briefing on July 16th, and I have talked to Supervisor Garrity, and I believe he's talked to Supervisor Merlino, and it just came up. We don't, because of the timing, have time for committee or discussion, and I know us three, we would like to attend. I'm not sure if there's others here.
In order to consider this, we are going to need to waive the rules. Waive the rules will require a two-thirds vote to entertain this resolution. The chair will entertain a motion. Let's start with waiving the rules.
I'll make it.
We have a motion by Mr. Garrity to waive the rules. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Simpson to waive the rules. Any further discussion on a motion to waive the rules?
Why are they going to the White House?
I can explain. It's cookies and punch.
I think that could be taken up under resolutions, under the discussion on the resolution itself. This is to allow that discussion to take place.
We're having a Big Mac party.
With fries.
With fries.
Let's try this. All those in favor of waiving the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Waive the rules is succeeded. Now, on the resolution itself, you want to articulate the resolution?
It would be to, it's a afternoon conference on July 16th, so we would need travel, and do you want to, would we come back the same night, evening? Or
Well, what you asked what it's for. It's the same conference as we went to last August. It's county officials from New York, New Jersey, several other counties, and they're all going to meet again to go over different concerns. It's similar to the meeting we went to last August. Just a continuation of that, the second round of meetings.
Is the president going to be involved?
No, I don't even think we're going to the White House this time. I think.
Oh, I will, believe me.
But it's to work with other county officials across the state that need.
Mr. Simpson?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Aquario was also on the call today that was scheduled, and is building a relationship with the secretaries, the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of the Environment. Their representatives will be there. Maybe the secretaries will be there. They didn't have a list of attendees, but you're able to interact, talk about your county issues with the people at the federal level that are making those decisions.
Oh, secretary would be gone, and you guys would
Not with the president.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, just a moment. Supervisor, did I get a second on
The discussion.
I don't have one on there. Authorize the travel itself.
I don't think he was finished.
So let's,
Finish
yeah.
No, just it was the travel, and I had asked Supervisor Garrity, because we could fly back later that evening or early that next morning.
I'm going whether the county pays for it.
I'm not sure what the
Perfect.
flight things. I think we need some discussion with Amanda because of the timing to be able to work out the. I don't have the.
Newport?
If I understand the resolution would be to send 3 supervisors.
No, that's not the resolution.
That's not the resolution. What is the resolution, Mr.
He
Garrity?
wants to do it, but I mean, I want to go. I mentioned it to Amanda a week and a half
Okay.
ago.
So that's
And
4.
I think, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think perhaps there were a lot of supervisors who didn't get the email, and last year there were probably a lot of supervisors who weren't even aware of the trip. So that needs to be opened up.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly would like to go. So put that in your resolution. However,
Well, we're requesting out-of-state travel.
That's where we're at.
I don't want to go.
The resolution that we would entertain would be for out-of-state travel. We just would need to know who we're authorizing to go to accept the invitation from the White House and to go to the conference. Maybe I should start this way. Those supervisors that wish to go to Washington for this week, could you raise your hand? And did you? And Jean. So that would be 4 supervisors: Supervisor Loeb, Simpson, Garrity, and Merlino.
They're all flying except for Bill.
Right. And now, in order to consider this, we're going to need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Supervisor Dickinson, a second by Supervisor Frazier. Discussion on the motion. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just have one question. What do we expect to accomplish? What are our goals? What do we expect to accomplish by going to the White House?
Okay.
Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I did a report earlier this year at a board meeting on the telecommunications effort that we made, where we met with representatives from the White House. We met with representatives, our federal representatives, Congress and Senate. The cell coverage, broadband, that's one of them. The FCC, those agencies are all federal agencies. You talked about something at your meeting, at our meeting, in your report, where we talked. There were numerous issues that were discussed there in other counties discussing the same issues. But the one that stands out the most to me was the telecommunications, cell phone, broadband. These are the people that are making the decisions on the federal level, and I can tell you that the trip was very successful, along with NACO. When we went, NACO is involved in this also. I'm going to tell you, I believe it was, can't believe the number. It was a number of billions that are being worked on now in a bill towards the cell and broadband issue right now, from the collective effort between NISAC, NACO, and these meetings with the White House and the federal representatives.
Further discussion on the resolution. Supervisor Leggett.
Is there a budget code that goes with that?
There is.
It's the legislative board's travel. I just checked it before we came in. Right now, there's a little more than $8,000, so there is money in there, but we may have to talk to the end of the year.
Is there an estimate on the cost involved?
I mean, if it's down and back, however much the plane fare is, so that could vary anywhere from, it could be $300, it could be $500, depending on how.
Thank you.
Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of authorizing the travel signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Discussion on other resolutions. There being no discussion on any other resolutions, I'll close discussion on all other resolutions. We'll vote on resolutions.
Before you vote, I would note that the waiving the rules of the board resolution that you just passed is going to be number 297, and authorizing out-of-state travel is 298. At this point, neither of those are subject to a roll call vote. Are you ready? Resolution 246, making supplemental appropriations. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 247, amending Warren County budget. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 257, adopting New York State Climate Smart Communities Pledge. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes, but I also agree with what Mr. Beatty had to say, so I'd like to watch the cost.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 282, amending table, 281 is table. Resolution 282, amending table of organizations and Warren County salary and compensation plan. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 283, establishing capital project H388, construct airport T-hangars. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 284, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Airport Repair Projects Reserve. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 286, authorizing appropriation of funds from Vehicle Reserve Fund. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 290, decreasing capital project 352, CR 31 and 13 bridge painting project. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 292, establishing capital project H387 Airport Fuel Farm. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 293, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Motor Fuel Systems Reserve Fund. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 294, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village parking fees. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 295, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Environmental Testing Reserve Fund. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes. Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
And Resolution 296, enacting Local Law Number 6 of 2019, entitled A Local Law to Establish a Sustainable Energy Loan Program in Warren County. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes. Vote on the collective motion. Mr. Dickinson, second. Second, Ms. Hogan. All those in favor of the collective signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now I'll open the floor to the public. Anyone wishing to address the Board of Supervisors regarding any matter? There being none, I'll entertain announcements. Supervisor Bramer.
Okay, I don't have an announcement, and I know it's late and people want to go, but I am disappointed that we didn't move on 281. As Mr. Mahar said to us, yeah, people are in agreement that we should be suing Mr. Decker, and now we are putting at risk our ability to sue because we're going to run into a statute of limitations problem. I hope that we can correct that quickly in the committee meeting and go after at least one of the defendants.
Right.
I do not think
I appreciate your comments, but discussion is then
there
closed.
is a public comment also, Chairman.
From the public. I had closed the public, but I didn't see you, sir. Would you like to address the board? Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Just state your name.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Peter Brothers, Queensbury town resident in the Lake George School District, for what it's worth. And I just wanted to first say that I appreciate that you folks, whoever's decision it was, or collaboration of sorts, to have a county meeting during the evening when taxpayers can actually attend these meetings. Oftentimes, I know that these meetings are held have been held during the day, and it's literally impossible for us working individuals to be able to attend these meetings. And also, I would like to state that there's been a few items, and I'm going to be very brief here because we've got to get on to other things, but specifically the several items obviously in the paper, been in the news, obviously the Siemens Cogen, the airport, the county nursing home. These are all critical issues, and whether had any involvement in the decisions that have been or yet be made, whatever decisions have been made. The county airport expansion, I think, was not a good idea from the standpoint that it's advertised as so-called free money at the federal level, $13 million or something like that, but well, it's not free money, it's tax taxpayer money, and we all pay for it. And most critically now, getting into a subject that we hear about close to our hearts, I guess, taxpayer hearts, is that during our January, when we got our county tax bill, all of us got the notice in the mail that 50% or more of our county tax bill is Medicaid, unfunded mandates, and whatever. And sure, there's all truth, whatever, or don't deny it by any means. In some respect, and that's great intent, and I applaud you for doing that. Really, I think it's a great idea, to let people know where things are at. At the same time, I'm not saying specifically all of you folks or anything, but I'm also saying that there has been in the past with the convenience factor of passing the buck, and that goes on to higher levels, the state and the federal, more or less. And you hear maybe our elected representatives at the state saying, well, it's the so-called Democrats from New York City that are prohibiting unfunded mandates from getting a resolution. And I'm just thinking that maybe there is, maybe there isn't truth, or that's a rather lazy excuse, where they should be actually saying that, okay, we know what the problem is, we want to fight it, and it's on, whether Democrat or Republican doesn't really matter. It really is the issue, not the party or the aisle, side of the aisle that you're on. And specifically, I haven't heard enough with regard to how we can control unfunded mandates and work with our state officials to get unfunded mandates under control. I think that there needs to be more done in this, and not being unnecessarily critical of any and all, but just would like to see more effort placed on that specifically, of course, with our elected officials who have, in my opinion, sort of the passing the buck, so to speak, with regard to saying, well, it's, sure, that's a problem and whatever, but we have no control because we're in the minority or something like that. It should be a much better way of being able to work with everybody, no matter what side of the aisle. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming out this evening. Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say, with regards to 281 and the comment that there's some concern about timeliness here, it's a 10-year-old debt, and if this has not been brought to your attention in the time needed, and a month is going to make any difference, then I think you have bigger problems, perhaps with your attorneys. I would also say that in the past, the Siemens deals all went down like December 6th, things like that, with the same kind of comments about, hey, there's a grant that's going to expire, or this or that, and we got to vote today, or we're going to lose $25 or something like that, and then you got stuck with, millions of dollars in debt. So think it through. If you weren't given enough time, ask why you weren't given enough time, because you deserve the time to make the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Announcements. Mr.
I'd like to respond to the gentleman before Mr. Whitehead. The mandates are really tough to deal with, and we obviously are a local group here. We don't have a lot of pull, but we belong to a association of counties. We belong to association of towns, association of town and villages. All of those entities we use to put more pressure on the state to stop or abate these mandates. So it's not just us here in Warren County. We have a lot of organizations that we work very hard at to try to roll back these mandates.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Supervisor Lowe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really excited about the Support Services Committee meeting. With all the passion that I heard about 281, I expect all of you here. I promise I will bring Gamble's pastries.
Yes, bring 2 coffee cakes.
Supervisor...
Okay. Wait, I got a couple more.
Go right ahead.
Work on is having Food Truck Fridays. That looks really good this summer. That segues into one of the things I do with the Red Cross is drive the food trucks, and I just want... Red Cross does not make the food. We get all the glory for serving it, but we do not make it. Southern Baptists generally make the food for the Red Cross. And that segues nicely into the subject I've mentioned many times about smoke alarm, free smoke alarm installation. Today my team was out installing smoke alarms in Queensbury and Glens Falls. Tomorrow we'll be in Stony Creek, Johnsburg, and Warrensburg.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent, excellent. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a younger life, I ran a professional trade association, and it brought me down to Washington, D.C. 2 or 3 times a year. We're not sending 4 individuals down for spring break. I mean, we're sending them down for business. I look forward to their report when they return, and I think that we should always encourage, if we can find it in our budget, to encourage those types of networking and relationships with the folks down in Washington, D.C.
Very well said, Ben. Very well said. Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I agree with some of what Mr. Brothers said about these unfunded mandates and the way that I found that I can't just sit here and create change in Albany or at federal level. I think you have to get out of the seat. You have to make those trips to Albany, advocate for your community, for your county. I think you need to build relationships with your federal representatives so that you can ask questions and weigh in and build those types of relationships where they'll reach out to you and look for solutions. And that was the big learning thing that I took away from the last time we went, is that they are willing to sit with you, listen to your issues, and work with you on solutions. So that is one of the reasons why this trip, I think, is very important, and because we can't fight these unfunded mandates by not speaking out. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to, since Mr. Loeb mentioned this, I put one of these on everybody's desk and a few extra there in Glens Falls because they've got a lot of people in Glens Falls and Queensbury.
I got 3.
Yeah, and I've got more. But June 28th is our opening night, our grand opening of this. Food Truck Fridays on the Mill Pond in the town of Horicon. We've got great entertainment. This 1979 band has a member, the originator of the band actually played for the Grateful Dead and is just a very accomplished musician, plays a lot of music that I think all of us looking around the table probably listened to at one time or another. But and he's a resident in the town, or he's got family in the town of Horicon. We have a great lineup of vendors here. Please come and visit us. Thank you.
I want to know if Bill's bringing the Red Cross truck.
No.
No?
If we can get someone to fake food for us, I'll do that.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. I was hoping we have a motion to adjourn. We have a second from Mr. Dickinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.